Hi there everyone, my name is Zach and welcome to my channel. Amongst other things, I'm a reenactor and a jouster, and today I'm going to be answering some questions, some from my patrons over on Patreon and some from the YouTube comments over here on YouTube. I did ask for some questions. I haven't been able to answer all of them in this video. All of my Patreon questions get answered. The YouTube comments ones will get answered if I have time, but they might actually become another video, or if you don't get your question answered, then please drop it the next time I leave that question. First question is from Robert over on Patreon. Robert says, do you think mounted men-at-arms would have used at least 2 different lance grips and possibly different types of lances? A brace grip for mounted and something more flexible for foot targets. So quite an in-depth question there. We do know that there were different types of lances. We do know that they could have different grips, and indeed they had a fitting on the back of the lance that interacted with the breastplate to allow for a stronger couch, especially in the late 15th century and the 16th century. The document that I have which states what a knight should bring to war just says 1 spear, and spear is used interchangeably for lance and spear. Although later on, it does say about having some extra spear staves. Now, whether or not those extra spear staves are for the knight himself or for his retinue, we don't really know. And of course, that document, well, not of course, and that document is just saying the minimum that each knight should bring. So the expectation was that they should have at least 1. The reality is that they could very easily bring more than 1. That is, of course, contextually dependent. That is a document. It's called the Apparel for the Field. It's a document from the late 15th or early 16th century. So it may be different in different countries. If you have more information about this, please do leave me a comment down below. I'd love to find out more. So, Sirloin de Boeuf, that's another one of my patrons. It says, what is the combat level of contact like at reenactments in relation to Boher and Hema? So it's generally a lot lighter than both. It's a lot less competitive at a reenactment unless you're actually doing something specific like a tournament. If you're talking about a reenactment battle, then generally it is less competitive, and so the level of fighting is not as hard. It doesn't get quite as hard. I'm really interested in going to Empire LARP this year to find out what combat is like at a LARP, so I'll be able to update this question when I've attended that one as well. Cecily has asked over on Patreon, how important is it that your soft kit is comfortable to wear and use, and is it? Soft kit is definitely the most important part of an impression. Even if you're planning on wearing your armor most of the day, your soft kit is what you're wearing in armor and out of armor. So being comfortable in it is really important. For late 15th century, that means actually something that's a little bit different to what we might consider to be comfortable in modern clothing. Getting it a lot tighter than what most men would consider to be comfortable nowadays is actually really important, because otherwise, if it's loose, then because the garments are meant to be tight fitting, they can actually rip and tear they're more likely to rip and tear if they're looser. It seems a bit strange, I know, seems a bit counterintuitive, but basically it means that if they're baggier, then the distances that they're moving change, and so the cuts on the fabric doesn't work quite so well. If you're interested in that, I know Cecily knows this because she's my mum and she makes my soft kit. But if you guys are interested in more about that, then we could do some more discussions on late 15th century clothing. Leave a comment down below. Okay, so we're on to some YouTube comments now. Friedricha says, pros and cons of swords and lances used on horseback. Why would someone use a sword as their primary weapon? There are lots of factors that feed into this beyond the effectiveness of a weapon. Most people, when we're discussing this kind of thing, and especially online, the main thing is, you know, practicality in combat. So lances seem like the best idea because they give you a really long reach. They increase your strength in the charge. Why would you choose that over a sword? When you're talking about actual combat in war, and that's an important distinction, war compared to tournaments, using a weapon actually becomes a secondary thing. Yes, you still want your weapons to be effective, but there are other factors that are factoring into it which are just as or more important than that. So in the medieval period, lances and poleaxes and things like that are in great use by the nobility because they have a baggage train with them. Knights were attended by soldiers and they had carts that pulled the armory. We know this. The documents explain that, you know, you would, as a knight, you would have a cart pulled by other horses that would carry your armory and your tent and things like that with you. When you start getting to the later periods, when, incidentally, the lance starts going out of favor with many cavalry units, this is around about the time where we have a professional army where everyone has to carry all of their own equipment. There's no baggage train to help you carry all of the extra weapons that you may need. Swords are extremely useful in a situation like that because they can be worn. They're negligible. You don't have to carry them around all the time with you. Well, you do, but they're not in your hand the whole time, which can get tiring after a while. There are other reasons as well. If you guys are interested, leave a comment down below and I will do a longer video on all the reasons why lances went out of favor. No BSS Survival says, would a hot-blued German Gothic harness be historically accurate for about 1480? There's two answers to this. The first answer is yes, if you are in Germany. The second answer is no, if you're practically anywhere else. The German armories at that time didn't sell quite so many and export quite so many as the Italian armories. There's very little evidence of German armor being worn in England for the 1480s. It's also worth saying that what most people consider to be Gothic plate is, we're looking at the very high-end Gothic plate. So actually, it also depends on the status of the individual that you are portraying. German armor did have a style in the 1480s, and that style was used by all different levels of soldier. But what most people consider to be German Gothic is actually very high status. So it would only be worn by the very highest status individuals. And last one for today is It's Gorani. They say, hello Zach, if I remember correctly, you're in the teaching profession too. So here is my question. In what shape or form do you involve your reenactment and jousting hobby into teaching students about history and social studies? I try and get it in as much as possible. We're learning about I'm currently teaching a unit on the Anglo-Saxons and Normans. So I've told my class that I'm going to bring in some mail so that they can see what actual mail is like. Later on in the year, we're going to be doing the Wars of the Roses, hopefully. So I'll be able to bring in some more equipment for that. I do like to do that. One of the biggest things that I remember from my primary school days was when the Romans came to visit. And I feel like that actually created my love of history, or at least fed into creating that love of history. So I want to be able to provide those kind of iconic moments to these students in my classes. Thank you very much for watching. Big thanks to my Patreons, both for the questions that they have sent in and also for the support that they give the channel. If you would like to support the channel, you know all the things that you can do. Like, share, subscribe. There's a link to the Patreon right below this video, and I will see you in my next video. Bye-bye.